Hi there. I haven't filmed a video in a while, so I do apologize for that. And I hope that the lighting is decent here. Right now, I pulled a bunch of lamps in my apartment and kind of surrounded myself with them, so it feels a little bit bright right now, but I hope that means that you can see me better. You know, my apartment's really dark and it doesn't get much natural light. It only has one window. Anyways, and I have my bookcase behind me. Yeah, so hopefully that'll be a little bit interesting visually. And I have my cute new magazine holders that I got from Target. They have these little foxes on them. They're in the clearance section. And they're actually for kids, but they're really cute. So I can put like my US Weeklies and you know, other magazines inside. And I have to show off, I did this hair bun thing today. So I just have this like hair donut thing, and then, you know, just pull my hair down around it like you would do with a sock bun, and then like a headband and all. So, you know, I tried to glitz it up a bit. Anyway, so today, please ignore the airplane right overhead if you heard that. I thought I might film a video about something I don't really talk about often. You know, I have opened up about my anxiety in the past, and yeah, I don't really talk about depression or much of that, and I'm not about to get into that right now, but I thought that maybe I would talk about where I live and some of the issues I have, where I'm at. So I currently live in low-income housing because Santa Barbara is a very, very expensive place to live in, especially if you're young and single and your job doesn't pay that well or have really good prospects for growth or, you know, moving forward. So I do have a degree. I have my bachelor's from UCSB. And I work full-time. You know, it's just for this area, which is very expensive, the cost of living is high. Most studios would start at around $1,000 a month, and one bedroom's around $1,200 or more per month. And that, of course, doesn't include like electricity and, you know, internet and those other sort of things that you have to pay for with an apartment. So I just wanted to provide you with that information about the average cost of rent. So, yeah, I rented a room the first 2 years that I was here when I had first got my job, and then I moved into my own apartment. But, you know, the thing is, I really want to live by myself and be, like, independent, do my own thing, and that's really important to me. However, just the cost of living is so much that I can't really afford those prices. So I signed up with the local housing authority, and I was on a wait list for about 6 months, which isn't too bad, until I got a call that said, you know, my application had been approved, and you are assigned points based on these different like preferences. So if you live in the city of Santa Barbara, you get some points. If you're a working family, which I counted as, even though it's only me, I do work, so that gave me some points. And then the other points were like, I think if you're a veteran or if you're a displaced resident, like you used to live in public housing, you got not kicked out, but for some reason that place shut down, then you'd get a preference. Anyway, so I did have some preference points based on working and on currently living in the city of Santa Barbara. So, yeah, so I had those preference points. And, yeah, so that with it, I don't know how I should go about this, but I put in my application with the main housing office for multiple different apartment complexes. You had to kind of check where you belong. Like, are you applying for Section 8? No. Is it low income? Yes. Like, just all this stuff. So I filled out paperwork, and then my current apartment complex where I live at now, and I've been here 3.5 years now. They called me. I met with the apartment manager. Oh my gosh, the paperwork. The paperwork is absolutely insane. So in terms of the cost of rent, I was quoted over $700 a month for a studio and a little over $1,000 a month for a one-bedroom apartment. And I first thought, holy guacamoles, I thought this was supposed to be super cheap. Like, $1,000 a month is still kind of big, you know? That's why I'm looking for public housing, because that's too much for me. So I decided to go with a studio. So I pay over like around $750 a month. It's actually $752 a month, which is the weirdest number, and it kind of annoys me whenever I write out my rent check. I'm like, $752, this is stupid. Just make it an even $750, you know? Anyways, yeah, so when I met with the apartment manager, I felt like I was signing up for a mortgage practically. All the stuff and paperwork I had to give her. I gave her copies of my federal and state W-2s, 6 months copies of my banking accounts, so that was my checking as well as my savings. I had to have a certified letter from work indicating, you know, how much money I make and that I do work full time. So I didn't really like having to get work involved with it and letting them know. I just went to the human resources lady, but still it kind of sucked. I don't want work to know that I'm living here, but oh well. I had to give copies of like my registration for my car. There was so much paperwork I had to bring. I think it was a copy of either your social security card or a birth certificate, and I brought in my social security. I feel like I'm forgetting things, but there was so much stuff I had to bring in. And then you also have to sign this kind of disclosure agreement saying they can contact your bank to verify all of your bank records. And you have to indicate how much money you have saved up, what your assets are, all kinds of crazy stuff just to rent an apartment here. Anyways, that was obnoxious, and every year you have to go through it again. You have to be re-qualified to live here. So they do check everything. Ow, Stitches. Stitchies, don't scratch me. He scratches my pants. He like gets his claws in and my legs are all torn up. Anyway, so yeah, that was the application process. Then when I moved in, you don't really have a whole lot of choice in terms of what apartment you get. You just kind of look at one, and if you want it, that's yours. There isn't an assortment of different apartments or layouts available. Like if there's one open and you want it, you get it. That's how it goes. So yeah, I moved into my studio. I had to make a deposit, which was 1 month's rent, and then my first month's rent, $752. And then eventually I did make the pet deposit, even though I don't think they're supposed to make you do that when you have an emotional support animal. I read online that you don't have to make a deposit when you have an animal for that purpose, but they did take my deposit. Just a heads up, they don't really follow the rules here or the law. They do what they want, and you just deal with it because you don't have many choices. All right? That's a running theme here. You don't have many choices. And that kind of comes along with not having much money. You don't have many choices about where to live. I'd love to move out and live in a nice place. Well, you can't because you can't afford it. So there's a lot of lack of choices here. Anyways, yeah, so I moved into the apartment. About a month after I moved in, I realized I kept getting bit by stuff around like my ankles, and I didn't know what it was because I'm not used to this issue. And then I used a flea comb on Mittens, which I didn't normally do because she never had an issue with fleas at her old place. And I gave her monthly, I think I used to give her Frontline Plus at the time, and she was covered in fleas. It was awful, and I felt like such a bad cat mom because my baby, you know, there she is, like covered in fleas, and I didn't want that for her. She's my little princess. So there's my picture of Mittens and her ashes behind me, by the way. Anyways, so then I thought, oh my gosh, there's fleas in this apartment, and then I realized how extensive it was, and it was all in the carpet. So the carpet was completely infested. I didn't put in a work request because I didn't fill out all the paperwork to have Mittens as an emotional support animal yet because I didn't have the $300 to do the deposit. So if I put in a work request, I was afraid they'd see I have a cat, I didn't pay the deposit, and I could get kicked out. So I just dealt with them on my own. I bought a bunch of borax, which is a little bit tough to find. I sprinkled it all over the place. I cleaned everything. It was awful. I was so grossed out, but every day after work, I'd come home and sprinkle in borax and then let it sit and then vacuum it up and wash, like, linens and everything, and eventually the fleas did go away, but it is something to note that my apartment was completely infested and I had no idea when I moved in. So super gross. Anyways, yeah, so things were kind of all right when I first moved in. I noticed the walls were thin. I could always hear my upstairs neighbor stomping around upstairs, and you could hear people walking up and down the stairs, which are over that way. And the biggest issue was really my neighbors. My neighbors are crazy. I want to be like nice about it, but in a completely honest sense, my neighbors are bananas. They are off the wall. Everyone has an issue. It's one thing or another thing. There's something going on with everyone here. And I'm not somehow excluding myself from that or saying that I'm in any way better than them. But everyone's crazy. Everyone's just, everyone's got problems here. So I've learned to kind of keep to myself. I don't really talk to many people. Initially, I was friendly and introduced myself, and then I was seeing more and more of people and learning about their demons or their issues, and then I receded and was like, okay, I'm just going to do my thing. I'm going to work. I'm going to come home, chill out, be on my own. I'm not talking to you. I'm not getting involved in their drama or learning about what's going on in their lives because it's very upsetting for me emotionally sometimes to hear about that stuff. So the big issue that I dealt with for a while, my next door neighbor was a woman, I don't remember her name, she was in her 50s, and she let her daughter, Shannon, who was around 28 or so, move in along with Shannon's 2 boys, who were 5 and 7 at the time. And it was just drama every day, every single day. So all 4 of them lived in the studio right next door to me, which is the same size as mine. It's around 350 square feet. Which is not big enough for 4 people to live in. You're only supposed to have 1 person in a studio, I think. So anyways, the daughter Shannon, she had drug issues, alcohol issues. She did not take care of her kids very well. Her kids had 2 different fathers. I was surprised when I first learned that, but later I was like, no big surprise there once I got to know her a little bit better. I'm not judging people who have multiple father so much, but her issues just, it was one thing after another. One day one of the fathers came and kind of kidnapped one of the kids and took him down the highway, and then the police had to come and get him, get the little boy and return him here because the mother has custody. The other father used to beat Shannon in front of the kids, so the kids were in therapy at a local place. The mom, Shannon, told me when she moved in, she was like, yeah, I moved in, I'm trying to get off some drugs, you know. So that's the first thing she really said to me, was she was trying to get off drugs, and that was a warning to me, like, whoa, okay, if you're trying to get off drugs, maybe you should go to a treatment facility or something, or not being around the kids at the same time. But she never really tried to get off of the drugs. She was still doing it all the time. So the kids really are the ones who suffered and who I feel the worst for, because they never chose to be born into that family, and I don't think they ever deserve to have a parent or a home life like that. They could have been really great boys with a good future and a lot of success ahead of them. Instead, they've had a very troubled life, and I'm afraid that things will be difficult for them in the future as well, given what has since transpired. So, stuff that used to happen with the boys, first the mom would keep them inside the apartment all the time. She wouldn't let them go out because they weren't supposed to be living there. But eventually she just stopped caring and let the kids go out, and the apartment manager found out about it. Anyway, so when the kids were inside all the time and didn't go out during the day, they used to bang on the walls a lot, and the walls are thin, so I'd always hear them banging and screaming, and then they'd throw stuff against the wall, and stuff would shatter. I think it may have been photographs, I'm not really sure. So that's what used to first happen, and then the kids got to go outside, which was really good. I mean, they're children, they need to go out and play and be active and go in the sun and have friends and go to school, and she didn't take them to school. They were enrolled in a school up north around Lompoc or something, but she never drove them there, and the kids really didn't go to school much. Yeah, so then the kids were outside a lot and kind of causing trouble out there. The younger one used to pee out on the patio right out in front of my door, and I saw it one time and I was like, oh my gosh, this is not okay. And I talked to the mom about it, and she said, yeah, he does that sometimes. He pees on the clothes inside the apartment too. She wasn't that concerned about it, and I was kind of shocked, like, oh my gosh, this should not be happening. He's 5 years old, he knows better than that. He was just acting up. The boys would act up because they weren't getting much attention at home, so they'd act up in any way so that they could get some type of attention, even if it was negative. So, yeah, they did that. They stole stuff like decorative things off my patio. They took all my flowers out of my pots and then threw it into the bushes, which really annoyed me because I spent my own money on those flowers, and I'm trying to make things look pretty and nice and decent outside, you know what I mean? I want it to just look like a nice, welcoming home, and they're like destroying things. And then once they stole my package, I had gotten some mail, and they admitted to me that they took it and destroyed it. I spoke to the mother about it, Shannon, and she said, oh, we'll make sure you get your money back. Don't you worry about it. Of course, I didn't get anything from her. You can't rely on her or trust her at all. So it was just issue after issue after issue. I found the kids playing with matches one time around the corner, and then I told them, give me your matches and I'm going to go talk to your mom about this. So I went back to Shannon, and she was completely out of her mind, like not there. I was at the door knocking, saying, Shannon, hello, and her door was open, and she just wasn't turning around and didn't notice I was there. And then she turned around and saw me and was like, hey, and I told her what happened, and she was like, yeah, I'll talk to them about it, but I don't think she did, and she didn't really care. So the kids were not supervised, and I called CPS a few times, actually. I know the kids weren't getting, like, bathed regularly or in school very often, and weren't being given, like, any kind of positive attention, but CPS can be very particular. I did not have great experiences calling them because, you know, when I mentioned there's 4 people living in a studio, the first woman who I called said, yeah, you know, homelessness is an issue here. And everything I said, she'd like kind of deflect and say something else. And I said, well, the kids are in school. And, you know, it was during the school year, and they're 5 and 7. They should be going to school. Like, they don't get fed meals sometimes. You know, one time the little kid, the kind of chunky one, was eating ice cream out on the patio, and he was just diving into it with his fingers, and I was like, do you need a utensil? So I went and got a plastic spoon for him and gave it to him, and they were just kind of on their own. Like, I don't feel like they had much guidance. Anyways, eventually they got a 90-day eviction notice. The mother, who was on the lease, has Section 8, which means if someone messes up, they have 90 days to leave, which really annoys me because I wanted them out. Like, I would be happy with a 1 or 2 week notice. Just get them out, you know. I'm sick of them and all the trouble they cause, and it was just a headache every day, and it was sad and stressful and upsetting, and there's just so much that went on. Like, it was just hard to hear it and to see it, and to feel like there was only so much I could do, you know. So eventually they moved out. There were a lot of issues with Shannon moving in with another neighbor here, a guy. She meets with these guys, and, you know, she stayed with him, and she didn't have another place to live. I know I'm getting a lot into that, but her story really affected me. Eventually, I think she found somewhere else to live, but the kids were taken away from her, and they were put into foster care. And during that time, Shannon actually overdosed. She took too many drugs, and she died, and that's that. She's no longer here with us. So they got evicted in September of about 1.5 years ago, and then she passed away that December, so it was just a few months afterwards. And I have heard about the boys since, actually, because I've asked around, because I do care about them, and they're one of the fathers, hopefully not the abusive one, maybe the one who stole the kid once, has custody of both of them. So they are with a family member, but I still worry about their prospects in life. And, you know, they've had so much happen already. There's a lot of assistance that they need. Lots of love. So that's the big story about my next door neighbor. Now I have a different neighbor who sometimes talks about his time in jail. One day I was kind of complaining about how small the apartments are. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's so small. I don't have any storage. Like, I don't know where to put my stuff. And he said, what? These apartments are great. They're big, much bigger than the cell I used to live in. And he said he was in and out of jail for like 9 years. So to him, the apartments are big and great, but to me, I don't feel that way. Anyways, so my new neighbor is better and friendlier. He does have a jail history, which is kind of a running theme around here. So in terms of my other neighbors, stuff I've seen or heard about, definitely drug and alcohol issues are prevalent. prevalent or prevalent? How do you say that? A lot of people with physical issues, physical like disabilities, a lot of mental disabilities, which are obvious when you see people and you know something's up. So there's a lot of people that move in and then move out and or get kicked out for different things. There's one guy who used to wear a fur coat even during the winter, and he would like kind of giggle to himself, and people used to call him Giggles. That was his nickname. I don't know what his name was, but we all called him Giggles. Because he would like giggle and walk up and down the street. And one time I woke up around 2 or 3 a.m. because I don't usually sleep that well, and I looked outside and I saw him walking past on the street, and I was like, oh my gosh. I think he may have been going up to 7-Eleven, because people usually walk up the street to the 7-Eleven. So anyways, neighbors in and out. There's a lot of movement here. The guy who Shannon actually lived with shortly, briefly after they got evicted, he did get arrested, and the police came and took away a bunch of guns and firearms. And a neighbor told me about it because he saw the police come and the guy got arrested. So just lots and lots of drama. People coming in, they're on like probation or in trouble with the court. You know, there's just so many issues here. And it does make for a stressful life if you're aware of it and you worry about it, which I do. You know, I get emotionally invested, and when I hear about something, you know, especially if there are kids involved like next door, it just makes me sad. And I don't know what I could do to help. And, you know, it's just upsetting. But I feel like, what are you going to do? You know, you can't help everyone. And there's just a lot of bad in this world, you know, and issues that you see. So, yeah, sometimes I do get kind of upset about living here. I feel like, why do I pay so much in rent, like $7.52 a month, to live here when most of my neighbors have Section 8 and they pay a much smaller amount, and I have to deal with so much crap. You know what I mean? I deal with so much stress and so much crap. And I know I could move out, but then I'd rent a room in a house, and I really, really treasure my privacy and independence, and I feel like some of it relates to my anxiety. I get anxious around other people and uncomfortable and just worried, and I'm nervous about it, and I worry how people are going to perceive me and what they're going to think of me. So it's nice to have my own space to come home to. Hey, Stitch. And just, you know, my own bathroom and kitchen. It's all mine. No one's going to judge me. I can be here. Stitch, what are you doing? He has a really long tail. Can you see how long his tail is? It's really long. Huh, big boy? Oh, he probably wants his dinner soon. Okay, you'll get your dinner soon, baby. Yeah, I feel like I pay this money and I deal with so much crap. But I... Kisses. He's giving me kisses. Little kisses. He's smelling my face. I love you too, bud. But anyways, I really like having my own space and not having this, you know, kind of deal with other people, so... Anyways, but back to what I said earlier about lack of choices. I think that is something that's very common when you don't have much money. Stitch is rubbing his head against the laptop. Stop it, honey. You're going to mess things up. He doesn't care. Just lack of choices, feeling like I don't have a lack of choice in where else I could live at, where else I could move to. Like if my car breaks down, I'm kind of like, ooh, what do I do now? I don't have money for another car, or, you know, something newer. I drive like a 28-year-old car, and it has over 200,000 miles on it. So I do get worried sometimes it's going to break down, and that's actually something that causes me a lot of anxiety and panic. And if I had money, I think, you know what, I could just get a newer car. I could get like a Honda Civic or maybe a CR-V if I'm feeling fancy, you know. I like the CR-Vs, but they're like too expensive. So I feel like money kind of gives you more comforts, of course, and more security, and you have more options. Like if I made a decent wage for where I live, you know, I wouldn't necessarily feel like this is the only place I could have my own apartment. You know, I could rent a different apartment in a different neighborhood away from these crazy people. Or I could have like a nicer car that's more reliable and dependable. And, you know, there's just so many options that open up, and, you know, so much more you can do. So I do worry about money a lot, but at the same time I do feel like, oh, don't step on the button. At the same time, I do feel privileged because I know I have a job and health insurance and a car that usually gets me from point A to point B, and a lot of people don't have that. And I do have a roof over my head and clothes and food, so I do have a lot to be thankful and grateful for. But sometimes I focus on the negative too much, you know. I just think about the other people who have so much more, and I'm going to put you on my lap, Stitch. You sit on my lap. I just think about, they have more, like they own a house, they have their own washer and dryer and a dishwasher. I sure wish I could have that. Yeah, but I am lucky, and you know, I've got my Stitch here too, and he's my buddy. You gonna bite? Don't bite. He's a biter. Anyways, yeah, so overall, I'd say if you had a choice, do not move into public housing, because it's going to be stress and chaos and just messy, unpleasant, and unfavorable, not in a great neighborhood. You know, the neighbors are bananas, everyone's got issues, the apartment itself is old, but I feel like I've done an okay job decorating and making it nicer. Other issues here are management. Terrible management. Like, I feel like I'm on my own, basically. The apartment manager is here 2 afternoons per week, and we have over 60 apartments here. The apartment manager is barely here. She's non-responsive. You give her a call, you send her an email, good luck getting a response. You're on your own. I put in a request for a service dog back in July of last year. Right now it's February. She never got back to me. Nobody ever got back to me. I had all the paperwork filled out with my psychiatrist. We filled out the forms they needed. He had a letter of recommendation. I had everything done. I handed it over to her, and I also sent some certified mail to her and her boss in the mail to make sure that, you know, they would get it. No response. Absolutely nothing. Like, they aren't there, basically. I feel like I pay my rent and I deal with everything else myself. If I put in a work request, it's a gamble if they're going to actually respond to the work request. Like, you know, if, like, I'm trying to think of something. When ants came into my apartment, which started when Shannon was living next door. Not by coincidence. I'm sure there was a reason. And I reported the ants to them, and I sent a picture of the ants that got into my fridge and were eating, like, my food. No response. You deal with stuff on your own. You're completely on your own with things. So sometimes they will come out and respond to requests, but you don't know about it because they don't say they're coming in advance, and they don't leave a note afterwards. So you have no idea what's happened. Sometimes I get home from work and I'm like, something's been changed. They'll leave a light on in my apartment, or one time someone used my bathroom and they left, like, the seat up. And I live here alone, and no one else has a key to the apartment, so I knew it was definitely a maintenance guy who came into my apartment, did whatever the heck he did, and left the seat up, meaning he used my restroom. So that makes me uncomfortable, and that's you know, something I definitely don't want in a new apartment. I'd like someone, like a responsible management who takes care of issues, but that doesn't happen here. It is just such a mess with management. If I try to go above my apartment manager's head, which I've tried to do a few times, then everything gets kicked back down to her. So I feel like I can't get anything done. Like, I went to her boss about the service dog request, and then her boss kicked it back down to her. So my apartment manager said, "Hey, I heard you had some questions," and I was like, "Nope." I'm not sure if that was very clear right now, but I try to go above the apartment manager's head. Things get kicked back down to her. She's largely unresponsive and doesn't do much. I've asked about things like the service dog, trying to get a screen for my apartment door. What else have I done? There's just so many things. So much crap I put up with here. But I do like having my own place, so, you know, it's just, I want to have my own apartment, but there's so much that comes along with it. So, yeah, I'm trying to think if there's anything else to share. Well, something that is coming up. I have the paperwork back here, actually. So my apartment, they're trying to redo the apartments and get some funding to make it a Section 8 apartment complex only, which means that about 6 of us are going to get kicked out permanently because we don't qualify for Section 8, and I'm one of those 6. So, I'm getting kicked out. Not kicked out. It's called permanent displacement. That's the wording that they use here. So yeah, they're gonna do a proposed transfer of ownership and renovations, and once I get my 90-day notice, then I gotta move out and find a new apartment. The issue being I can't afford an apartment of my own in this area. So I feel like I'm in this weird space where I'm not like poor enough for Section 8, which, you know, most of the neighbors are, and they don't work. I'm one of the few people who works here. But I can't afford like an apartment of my own here. So I really don't know what I'm going to do about that. And if I think about it, it causes me a lot of anxiety and stress. So I'm just pushing it away for now. I'm just kind of distancing myself. You know, work has been really stressful lately, so I'm trying to just get through my days, go to work, take care of business, you know, and then eventually, I'm pretty sure I may, you know, panic and freak out once I get my 90-day notice. Look, Stitch, I'm doing... Okay, I'll put you down. I don't know what those are called, but I'm doing some kind of weights with you. I told you everyone's a little bit weird here. All of us. A little bit crazy. Yeah, so eventually I'll have to move out, and I'm not sure what I'm going to do, but hopefully it'll be a good thing because there's a lot that I've dealt with here and a lot that makes me unhappy. I don't know where I'm going to live, though. I have no idea. Anyways, I've got this thick packet that I got in the mail all about people who are moving out, and then they did like a study on everyone who lives here and their income. I don't know if you are curious or want to see it, but there's like this little grid they did where they talk about, okay, family size, blah, 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 income levels. 44 families are extremely low, 11 are very low, 8 are low, 1 is moderate. And I was like, who's the person that's moderate income and why are you living here? Oh my gosh, you need to get up out of here, mister. I think at the back, is that where they have the income guidelines, which probably would surprise some people, but, you know, depending upon where you live. So here, let me see. I doubt you can read these. I highlight where I'm at. I'm like, what group am I in? So here, if you're low income, it means you make less than $44,600 per year. This is an expensive place to live at, man. Money does not go very far. So that's the group that I'm in. People with like extremely low income or under $16,000. The person whose median income, which there is that one person that lives here, earns less than $55,800 a month. Why would you live here? If you earn like somewhere between $55,000 to $44,000, wouldn't you be like, I'm getting out of here, I'm getting out of crazy town, I'm gonna go get myself a nice apartment, like maybe a decent studio or 1-bedroom apartment? Why would you live here? I don't know who that is. I actually suspect it's the nurse. There's this guy who's a nurse here, and I think they make good money, so I think it's him. Anyways, this like stuff was kind of interesting because it had like all these studies on people who live here and ethnicity and stuff. So anyway, yeah, so those are so much stuff going on. Goodness gracious, it's stressful. Anyways, I've never really, you know, talked about all that public low-income housing stuff before. So, yeah, I just hope someday, you know, I'll get a better job finally and move up and be able to afford a nicer place or something, because it's expensive here, and even closer to my mom's house. I was looking at moving there, and the rent is still expensive down there. It's still $1,200 a month or so for a 1-bedroom. So things are so expensive here. Anyways, well, if you have any comments or experiences you want to relate to, please leave a comment below. And thank you for watching. I know this was a long one. Bye.